Afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much for joining us despite the sunshine and despite Boris Johnson's 12:30 announcement today. Great to have you tuning in for the next instalment in our Agent Matters programme. We're actually today revisiting the corporate travel sector, which we last had a proper catch-up with almost 2 months ago. So huge amount has happened and hasn't happened at the same time in the interim. So it'd be great to catch up with two familiar faces from last time's panel and a new face as well. So welcome back to Clive Wratten, the CEO of the Business Travel Association. Welcome back to Tom Davis, who is Director of Customer Support and Compliance at Click Travel. And welcome to Kieran Hartwell, who is the Managing Director of Travel Counsellors Corporate Travel Division. So two really different TMC models there, and also Clive from the BTA on the association side. So thanks very much for joining us, guys. A lot has happened since we last ran this programme with you. Perhaps, Clive, if I can come to you in the first instance and just ask for a bit of an update on what you and the BTA have been doing. I know you've been very, very vocal throughout the crisis in terms of what's needed from the government to really kickstart the corporate travel sector. How are those conversations going, and what are you currently working on?
Yeah, thanks, Pippa. Well, yeah, there's been a lot going on and we've come a long way, but still slightly frustrated at the kind of lack of understanding around what business travel does and what we need. So the last few weeks have been very much, since quarantine came in and before, was campaigning to find a better solution to that. Like many people, we felt it was the wrong solution at the wrong time. Had it come in earlier, but we could have understood that. But what this is doing is basically blanket ban on all kinds of travel, and from a business travel point of view, was wiping out any prospect, and remains doing so, of the UK economy getting started again. So we're very much campaigning through the government in any way we can. We've been part of the conversations with the Home Secretary. I've been fortunate enough to have an in to number 10 to the business advisors there, and start partly educating people around what business travel does and what it presents to the UK economy, and why it's so important for all of us, not just us and our colleagues in the industry, but for UK industry and the UK economy overall. So this week is a big week, as you rightly say. We're waiting to find out what the update is, and Airbridge is coming in, and continually we see great news for the leisure industry, which we're very pleased about, obviously. But if the air routes that are suggested, and they are still only suggested at the present time for the travel corridors, then there's not going to allow business travel to get really restarted again. And we're going to use this week to shout as loudly as we can to try and get our voice heard, to have those routes opened up to allow business to start trading again. Yeah,
we're just catching up on today's news that there might be those 10 destinations from which we no longer have to quarantine when we get back, which is great news. But again, it's so holidays orientated rather than business travel. So it's tough. I mean, Kieran, what's your point of view on how the government has been responding to date, and whether it's really fully aware of and conscious of the difference between business travel and leisure travel?
Yeah, I mean, we have had a great debate about that exact subject in our own business today. If I can just start by saying, Clive, I think the BTA have done a tremendous job representing the corporate travel industry. We appreciate everything that you're doing. Obviously, with large-scale furloughing going on within the travel space, having an organisation that represents us to the government and other industry bodies has been critically important to the success, not only of our business, but also the industry at large. So we greatly appreciate all of your advocacy and work there. From a government perspective, we feel like that the corporate travel space has not necessarily been carved out and given any special attention. We have worked with the BTA actually and provided data and information about routes, critical routes for our business travel clients to be able to travel within. There doesn't seem to be much attention has been paid to that or being paid to that at the moment. And our business is very focused around the SME sector, which is really the lifeblood of the UK economy, right? So being able to get that cohort of businesses traveling again, we feel is really important.
Yeah, and is the fact that it just doesn't really make front pages in the same way that holidays does, is that part of the problem here maybe?
Yeah, it's not. it's not necessarily the sexiest part of the industry, is it? Right, but it's a critical part that powers. You know, like I said, it's really the backbone of the economy. So it's an area that we feel probably perhaps commands a bit more attention than it necessarily gets at the moment.
Yeah. Some other recent developments in the last week or two have been some airlines announcing or actually getting fleets moving again. We had EasyJet recommencing some domestic flights last week. Virgin's announced when it's going to have JFK and Los Angeles back, 20th of July, I think. Shanghai and San Francisco from August the 4th. So there is some movement there in terms of routes. I mean, how big of an impact would that have for you, Tom, with Click Travel? Is your business mainly, what's the breakdown between international travel and domestic?
Yeah, so we're a predominantly domestic TMC. To be honest, we've got 60% of our bookings occur within the UK. And we, in terms of the flight that we're getting in, we are still limited pretty much by what the government and the FCO advice has been. And although if we did open up these routes, we do actually also think that we need people to be off furlough and going back to work in order to be able to travel in the first place. We're much more concerned with the measures that hotels are putting in, and the announcement today from Boris can in no doubt help as well. But we haven't seen, to be brutally honest, the bookings coming through in expectation of that. And we are still very much at where we were a month and a half ago when we last had this chat with TTG. Really, our bookings are still 90% down, and we're finding people are still very cautious in terms of booking. We've got short lead times. People are booking, very, very close to the event because they're not sure if things are going to be going ahead. But hopefully that can start to change now with measures that are more acceptable for hotels to be able to open, and the bars and restaurants around it as well, because it's difficult for people to be able to go away on business and have to queue for 20 minutes outside a supermarket to get their dinner, etc. So we hope that those things are really going to start to bring it back.
Yeah.
Pippa, can I just add to that? Sorry, we've had quite a few key workers travelling, so firefighters going to Afghanistan or air traffic controllers in other markets and such like. What we found is obviously the time to complete the transaction is vastly longer than it was previously. And the amount of times that the consultant is having to interject in that transaction is vastly more than it was previously. So, Tom, a question for you actually, if it's okay. You guys have obviously done very well in the online space with corporate travel clients. What sort of trends are you seeing with customers that are starting to book again using online versus offline?
It's a really interesting question. In terms of what we've been doing over the past 2 months, I had it down and I spoke last time that it is really not online. Like you've just said, the booking process can be extremely complex. At a high level, we've got 30% of the business around representing that 10% of booking. So if you like, 3 times as bad for us in terms of cost in order to actually make those bookings. But we have seen there's a bright outlook for that in terms of the future. Almost all of the direct suppliers that we work with, the GDS, Booking.com, and also some of the more direct connections that we've got with hotel suppliers, are now starting to provide COVID safety information through the API.
Right.
So that we can actually, instead of the agents getting involved, phoning around hotels and double checking what's open, what's in place, we're finding that a lot of that information is now starting to be moved online. So we've, with our new Click Care offering, started to develop the ability for users to be able to search and filter based on information we've got from hotels around their COVID safety. So we're just certainly working to fix that problem, if you like. We know that it's offline at the moment, but between us and our suppliers, I think everybody's working towards knowing that customers are going to need more information than they had in the past. But it's not sustainable for us as an industry to be going back to doing offline bookings in the way that it was, 10 years ago.
Certainly not with large scale furloughing, potential redundancies, reduction in headcount, all that type of stuff. It's really, really tough time.
Yeah, of course.
Thanks.
Clive, what's the BTA doing in this in the sort of duty of care space, and the increasing pressure on TMCs to make sure they've got this information and they're helping their corporate clients give their employees the information that they need?
Yeah, well, I think it's important, as an industry, we talk to the suppliers on behalf of the industry to say, we're all moving in a different direction now. The information that's needed is vastly different from what it was before, and we need to advocate what our TMC members are doing. Out of these difficult situations do come opportunities, and the importance of what a TMC does, whatever the model it uses, has never been more vital before, and we need to get that message out into the wider audience, not least the government, to understand, going back to the original point, what it is that our members do and what a valuable service they provide, particularly around things such as duty of care and well-being, which are going to be ever more important than they were before. And I think that's good. I think it should have been more than that previously, and it's sad it's taken something such as this to really raise it up the agenda around what we do. But we will continue to speak about that through our contacts in government and elsewhere to kind of impress the kind of services that our members provide and the support that they need from central government. I mean, we've just seen the UK government have opted out of the data piece that is in Europe for whatever reason, or chosen not to put into it. Why would you do that at a point when we need to get confidence back to the consumer, whether that's leisure or corporate, by providing info? So it falls on our members to be able to provide that information, which is fine, but we need their help to get through that. And that's the key messaging moving forward out of this, is confidence.
Yeah. And have you seen much consistency between all the sort of hotel and accommodation brands, for example, in terms of what regimes and protocols they're following? Because if there isn't consistency, it does make the job a lot harder, doesn't it, to keep tabs on exactly what everybody's doing and regularly updating that?
Yeah, and that is the issue that remains. It's true that there is a lot of difference between the levels, and we, been arguing right from the beginning that we need a consistent minimum standard, which is a high standard, but minimum standard that will give people confidence, whether they're getting in a taxi, on a train, or on a plane, or staying in a hotel, that they know that there's going to be a minimum level. And how do we as an industry come together to make that happen? There are a number of areas that have done that, but it still hasn't kind of completely come to that point where we can go, yeah, you can expect that wherever you go, because it's hugely difficult, and it is going to take time to get to that point. But what I impress regularly, and I say this as the association, is that this industry should not right now be using this as a competitive issue, that's saying we're more safe than you are, because that is not going to get us all up and moving. We need to all kind of work together to say, as an industry, we take it seriously, and this is what you're going to experience when you travel. That opportunity comes later, because the demand has to build first. So my plea to any suppliers listening is, yeah, we love the information, we love it coming out, but please, at this stage, use it for the industry competitiveness, not as your own individual company.
That's a really interesting point. Kieran, what about from travel counsellors' point of view, the conversations that you're having with suppliers and looking at the information that your corporate TCs are able to give to their customers?
Well, it's a moving feast, as we all know, right? So that you've got the high touch, highly personalised service component, where you're having to really communicate with the traveller from multiple times during the booking, and then actually several times whilst they're en route, right? So what's the experience going to be when I leave my house to get to the airport? What's happening at the airport? What's the rules of this particular carrier? Do I need to wear a face mask? What's going to happen on board? All that type of stuff. So we've built a hub for our travel counsellors to use, so that they can be kind of the trusted travel advisor, so to speak, to corporate clients. But again, that's almost a full-time job in its own right, trying to keep that up to date, because of the vast inconsistencies in the information and the fact that things are changing, like literally not just daily, but almost seemingly by the hour. As we found out on this call today, right? 30 minutes before the call, some new information comes to light. So,
yeah, it's very difficult to keep up. Would travel counsellors have been working with the more informal accommodation sector, like Airbnb, for example? Just interested to see if that's going to be less appealing to the corporate traveller than it perhaps was for a certain corporate traveller a year ago, because it's perhaps arguably the large hotel chains that are going to find it that bit easier to assure clients' standards.
Yeah, that's a great question. We don't tend to work with the kind of disruptors in the lodging sector at the moment. And that's largely just based on demand from our customers. So we're trying to make sure that any partners that we're working with meet certain minimum standards. And if they don't, it's really important that we're communicating that to our clients to make sure that they're really informed about everything that's going to happen right from the start of the travel process to the end and returning home.
Just
it's difficult, right? Go ahead, Tom. Sorry.
No, sorry. I was just going to add to exactly what you've been saying. We've got exactly the same problem. It's a constant thing to keep up with. We've got a hub for our customers, and we've literally got someone full time within our business who's sucking in all the news and representing that for the customers. I'd just like to add that one of the things that we've identified to almost finish the loop on that is that although we're going to be told by suppliers what they have got in place, etc., we've given travellers and bookers a real-time way to report something that might not actually match up to what the expectations were. So we're going to look to try and leverage sort of the wider community that we've got within our customers and sort of share that information around. And I'm sure that's something that would probably be used for a wider level as well as an industry.
Yeah, of course. That sounds great.
Yeah. I had one question, and excuse my ignorance on this one. We've talked a lot about travel insurance and how few policies there even were at one point, although the underwriters are starting to come out with travel insurance policies that that are conscious of COVID. How does that work in the corporate travel sector? Do corporate travel insurance policies tend to be less dependent on FCO advice, or is that FCO advice against all but essential travel just as big a barrier for your clients at the moment? Or Clive, from a BTA point of view, I don't know.
I mean, if I start off and let these guys come in, because it's a really interesting point, because we've been worried about this as you are in the leisure side of the industry around the FCO advice. Now, it really seems to depend on maybe the size of the corporate or how they work, but a number of larger corporates have it on their general insurance. So that would be covering everything from liability right the way around. So business travel is included on that, which seems to, in some cases, cover pretty much everything, including COVID. When you get into a lower, maybe an SME, a lower spend, who may be buying a travel policy for their travellers on an annual basis or individually even, then clearly that would be affected by the FCO advice. So it is very much a case-by-case basis on a corporate level. And I kind of yield to Tom and Kieran from experience, but at a top level, we're trying to engage with the insurance industry, understand, but the big corporates seem to have slightly less of an issue because of the way they insure their risk. So yeah, that's the overall position. Yeah. These guys may know more on down to each level basis.
I think in terms of insurance, it varies across all of our different customers, but we have definitely found from an engagement point of view, if like, we have not had any customers that are willing to go against FCO rules, unless it's a key worker situation like the fireman that Kieran's just mentioned.
Yeah, it's the same kind of principle here. I would say in the SME sector, quite often you've got owner-operators, right? So they're maybe a bit more flexible with policy and making decisions that they're going to do. But at the end of the day, it has to be based on individual choice, doesn't it? Because I'm not a lawyer, but I'm sure that there is a liability associated with going against FCO advice for a company and enforcing someone to start traveling again, right? So it's not the same as if I choose that I want to go on holiday, right? That's up to me, isn't it? That's my own personal choice. But for business travel, the company has to put a lot of processes and procedures in place to make sure that the traveller is safe and secure and healthy and all of the above for the duration of that journey.
One of the issues with the current FCO advice is that it has moved slightly, as we all know, that has been reported, but it says, it's okay for essential business travel. Sorry, I'm not speaking verbatim, but it says essential travel is available. Now, if you go into the definition on the government side of essential, it's basically down to you as an individual to make that decision. And that's the problem with it. When you leave it to that point, people are probably going to edge away from it because of the risk profile. Sorry, there's some feedback there. But so, we need that clarity from government, really important to say, yes, you can travel, and no, you can't travel, rather than leave it hanging as it is at the present time, because it serves no purpose to anybody. Everybody would just move away from doing it and say, I'll just leave it for now. Yeah.
Tom, you mentioned that booking levels at the moment haven't really improved a great deal to when we chatted to you a couple of months back. Can you tell us anything about the bookings that have come in? Are there any interesting patterns? When are they booking for? Who is it? Anything that you've seen?
Yeah, well, it is almost exciting trying to guess what is going to come back, because we are seeing changes in the type of bookings that are going through, and we've definitely seen an increase in ferries and car hire, that people are getting around in that way, and I think being able to control more of the journey themselves seems to be something that customers are going for. We've also seen international rail and a bit of a choke up increase. So I think if flight restrictions and corridors and things that you have to do on the plane continue to be quite disruptive to a business traveller, we're going to see an increase in people using those methods to get around. And we definitely think that if they can get the car hire cleaning piece sorted, we think car hire will actually be quite popular with business travellers as we come out of lockdown quarantine.
Interesting. And anything in terms of spend or duration of trips or anything like that, or nothing specifically standing out?
Well, we found our customers to be less price sensitive in terms of they're not willing to take a risk of a certain standard of a hotel. If they know that there's a brand and there's a rate available, then they will take it if there's a need to travel at the moment. We're not sure how that's going to come out across at the end of lockdown, how hotels prices are going to be affected. I think you hear things either way, to be honest. Our hotel's going to need to lower the prices to win the demand or increase the prices to cope with less capacity. I think that's all pretty much up in the air at the moment. But yeah, we've certainly seen less elasticity for price at the moment.
That's interesting. So the decision-making factors are shifting a little bit away from what it might have been, kind of location and convenience followed by price, but now it's going to be safety and brand recognition almost. Kieran, anything interesting happening in the last few weeks from travel counsellors' side in terms of bookings and patterns?
Well, if only the corporate travel was following the patterns of leisure. We're actually seeing a really big uptick in leisure, which is good, right? It's positive for the travel industry overall. We month over month, year to date, we're 100% up and 50% up on the first 2 weeks in June compared to last month. So definitely seeing a good increase in leisure. Pretty flat still in corporate, large percentage down, as you would expect. The sort of bookings that we're seeing are, again, similarly to what Tom was saying, less price sensitivity, much more about safety and well-being of the individual traveller. Certainly an uptick over the last 6 weeks or so of kind of private aircraft charters for some very random and specific routes and various different things. But obviously there are businesses that still need to get skilled people safely to destinations. So I'm not sure that that's necessarily something that will continue long term, but certainly at this moment in time, we've seen an uptick there.
A little pocket of sales.
Yeah, a little pocket of hope.
And Clive, from your conversations with other BTA members, would that tend to tally that it's been quite flat really for the last couple of months, or are some seeing a little bit more of business return in the most recent weeks?
I think it is still very flat. We did a very quick and dirty survey of our members last week, beginning of last week, and there was a marked increase on inquiries, people sussing out what is possible, what is available to travel on, not really materialising into too many bookings. But I think we take some hope from that members are reporting where, using old school words, but the phones were not ringing. Inquiries started to come in. So it's starting to think people are wanting to get out and travel. We know from some of the calls we've spoken to, there is a pent-up demand that they need to get back out. They see their businesses stagnating and they need to get out and see clients or go and do whatever it is that they've got to do. But until we get clarity around where you can travel to and the FCO advice, as we've just been discussing, I think business travel is always going to be at a very low level until that changes. Where leisure, to Kieran and Tom's point, people make your own decisions about you want to go on holiday, it's open, I'm going to take that personal risk to go. So yeah, there is some encouragement signs out there, some domestic travel beginning to filter through, and the news today around hotels, as we were talking about earlier, being down to 1 metre, allowing them to trade and to open, will make a difference, but it's a long way to go yet before we see anything, and we've just got these big hurdles to get over. I'm sorry to repeat myself, but we just need those dealt with, and then we'll see, then we'll start getting a picture.
Yeah. There's been lots of talk as well about the large scale events side of the travel sector, you know, conferences, exhibitions, and how much longer that's going to take to come back. A lot of people cancelling events even till the end of the year at the moment, aren't they? Because they feel so unsure that they're able to put on conferences and exhibitions and actually have people attend in person. How big a part of the market do you think that is, Clive, considering BTA members? That sort of, MICE travel as opposed to straightforward corporate travel.
Yeah, it's a significant part of our members' business. You know, some specialise in it, others have you know, an area where they focus on. But even if they don't, there are people that are travelling to conferences and, you know, therefore create business travel. So it is a massive part, and that's how a lot of business is done. And clearly, you know, that industry is, you know, that side of the industry is really suffering alongside this. And how long is it going to be until we can have groups of more than 100 people getting together? And the inevitable question is, or then we go to part virtual, part real, and you know, it's like a lot of things that, you know, that works, but I don't think it's really there for the longer term, and we need to get that back, and it's part of the stimulus of overall travel. So yeah, it is hit, and nothing's going to move on that until we start seeing, you know, the kind of virus coming under control, or a vaccine coming around. How long is that going to be until we see that part of the industry coming back? But yeah, it's a difficult one, that.
Yeah. It's clear that even once we can go back to hotels, the experience, particularly of the hotel product, is going to be different. You know, we've heard lots about no more breakfast buffets, and occupancy might be half, and you can't use the gym, and you can't use the pool, and all those different sorts of things. How worried are you, Tom and Kieran, as TMCs, about the experience that the corporate traveller gets being not what they expect, you know, kind of not meeting their expectations, and could that become a problem if their you know, their travel experience isn't what they really feel like they've paid for?
I would imagine that right now everyone would prioritise health, safety, personal well-being over and above being able to use the gym or go to a breakfast buffet. That would be what I would think. So until such time as Clive mentioned that there's a vaccine, or that there's a clearly defined way out of this, I would assume that people would be more accepting of some of the nuances that we're all just going to have to get used to. It's a bit like, you know, 3 months ago you would never have thought of having to go stand in a queue for an hour to get your groceries, would you? So it's I guess the same principle.
Yeah, I would agree with that. The feedback that we've had from some of our more corporate clients is that if these are the measures that people need to do in order to do the work and do the business travel, then they will be accepting of it. But I think probably more than in the leisure sector, it's possible. We know that hotels are doing things like booking in breakfast or delivering them to the room, which all involves a little bit more organisation and some offline processes for mine and Kieran's teams. But in terms of being at work, that's more of a part of their process to get their job done. So I actually think business travellers will probably be more up for that kind of thing than somebody who's on holiday and you know, it's getting in the way of their enjoyment.
Yeah. Saved up all year for the 2 weeks.
Saved up all year, and now I've got to only eat my breakfast at 8:05 because that's my slot.
I think what it does add, though, is an interesting dilemma around pricing. So whilst I think I absolutely agree with what the guys have said, that people are accepting and health and well-being is far more important, but suddenly you say to yourself, when you're having this discussion with train operating companies, like you've got a first-class carriage that you're paying a first-class price for, social distancing gives you the space, which is one of the things, you know, sadly you have for first class, and no onboard product, no lounges. So can you then expect to receive the same amount of money in return? And I'm not saying it's right or wrong, I'm just saying it's a dilemma that we have as an industry in the short term to understand that, particularly if yields are low, load factors are low, you need to put your yield up to counter that, but then you're giving half the service you were before. How long is it before people go, well, yeah, I recognise that I want to be safe, but I'm paying a lot of money, and you know, I'm not getting anything for my money that I used to get. So I don't know where that's going to go, but I think it is something that may come up as an issue.
And would you expect corporates to, if anything, be wanting to manage costs more keenly at the moment, and you know, be looking to obviously wanting to perhaps cut costs where they can, and not investing in first class travel maybe?
But yeah, that's the thing. Yeah, we've all, doesn't matter what industry you're in, you've had your budget cut, and the money is a problem. But equally, well-being becomes more important, and therefore, we've already said it here, both Tom and Kieran, people are looking to pay more. Price isn't necessarily the driver. So it is just kind of getting that right mix. It's a classic kind of revenue management position of saying, here's the product against what my need is and what is the right price, and those constantly change. So yeah, I think corporates clearly will have less money, but they're going to invest it more wisely, which therefore doesn't mean each individual item they buy is going to be cheaper than it was before, personally.
I gather there's been a bit of a problem quite recently with some suppliers having had their insurance pulled, which means they're no longer able to offer credit to TMCs to enable them to book in advance and not necessarily pay up front, which is putting TMCs in a difficult position, perhaps that they've got to pay up front or go back to clients and change payment terms. Is that a problem you've been looking at, Clive, and indeed how big of a problem?
Yeah, it's one we flagged very early on in the piece, that when we come out into its current recovery phase, as it were, that there's all the cash, if you like, has been taken out of the system, and with the travel industry generally, whether a leisure or corporate, being zero rated, which hasn't been an issue, where there hasn't been any travel going on, is a real concern for us. And we're talking to credit insurance agencies and industry to see how we can work together, and that equally will need some government lobbying, I suspect, to get them to underwrite in some format moving forward. And that is critical now, because up until now it hadn't really mattered, as I mentioned. So it does worry me. It does worry a number of the members that we have in the BTA have raised it. And we will see as to how difficult a problem it becomes in the next few days and weeks, really. But yeah, it is potentially a big one coming over the horizon.
Is that something that Travel Counsellors has experienced yet, Kieran, that suppliers aren't able?
Well, 100%. Yeah, we've definitely seen insurance underwriters particularly pulling credit terms for certain clients, and then that obviously creates a challenging conversation, because the said clients aren't booking or doing anything right now, right? So there's no necessarily credit to be had, but it's when the taps get turned back on again, it becomes more of a problem. So we've been looking at payment solutions and options overall as something that's come up that I guess we weren't expecting as part of this process.
Interesting. And Tom, what about for Click Travel? Has this been a problem you guys have experienced?
Not as far yet. Fortunately, we've got a good cash position, so we've been able to keep all of our credit lines, and we get our money in from our customers. Actually, we've done quite well in that area.
Yeah.
But just to be clear on the point, Pippa, the point I was making was about clients' individual lines of credit as opposed to our own.
Yeah. So it's the supplier enabling your client to book and pay later.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, this does sort of tie in a way to the ongoing refund saga, which I know you did touch upon a couple of months ago. I mean, Clive, there must be some of the larger BTA members who have hundreds or thousands of bookings with certain airlines. Are some of them still in a very difficult position in terms of not having been able to get refunds for all of their customers yet? Have things really improved since we checked in with you a couple of weeks ago?
It's not really improved much, but it has improved in fairness. And again, I had a meeting with the Air Strategy Group this morning, and refunds is always still top of the agenda. And we know it's coming through, but it's taking anything up to 3-4 months for that money to come back. We've seen the first refunds appearing from Lufthansa in the last weeks. It's since March that when they were put through. Now it's some funding going on. So yeah, it is hugely frustrating for that. Many airlines have now come around to refunding, but of course doing it through BSP Link, it's been talked about a lot, is giving them the control of how long it takes, and it's just taking far too long to get those refunds back. The next issue, which was raised this morning quite rightly, is people now booking to go forward that need the flexibility, and say Germany closes, they need a refund. Are they going to get put to the back of the queue, or are they going to be brought to the front of the queue? Will they switch GDS refunds on for the new bookings post the 1st of June, for example? Those are questions we're now going to be starting talking to the airlines around, because it just can't carry on like this and using it, because it will never catch up otherwise. So they've got to draw a line somewhere. So refunds remains a real critical issue still in this side of the industry.
Yeah, it's all well and good saying booking terms are flexible and cancellations will be available, but a lot of clients don't have any faith in the refund process anymore, do they? So it's they wonder exactly when they'll get that money back, which is very frustrating. Kieran, question for you. I know a lot about travel counsellors' trust model that they operate on the leisure side. Is that the same in the corporate travel side, or is it a totally different model?
No, it's completely different. There's usually mostly a different booking processes, different systems, and in some cases, travel counsellors are leveraging Phoenix, which is their in-house proprietary platform, but for the most part, it's GDS based.
Right. Operating just like a
traditional TMC would, yeah.
And just looking ahead a little bit to the future, what kind of conversations is Click Travel having at the moment with clients about their future plans, Tom? Are there clients who are already telling you they're expecting to be cutting travel and reducing spend, or are they telling you that, you know, things will get back to some semblance of a normal level in time?
Yeah, well, we've got a wide range of customers along that spectrum that you just mentioned. Really, we've got a few customers that I think somebody said earlier, chomping at the bit, ready to get back out, and they see real value in getting their people around. With those type of people, we're talking to them about Click Care offering, which is a package of things that are relevant for this the world we live in right now, really. So it's around the approvals and the policies that people have got in place. So that sort of look with one eye ahead into the future, where we might have second waves or certain areas that clients won't let their travellers go to. We're also talking to them about the duty of care offering we've got that enables them to locate where their travellers are as well. Similarly, if there's any short-term issues. So we think that people are going to travel, and there will be some customers that certain areas that previously made up quite a lot of their travel spend actually don't travel at all anymore, and they can leverage, you know, home working, video meetings. But we have just positioned ourselves to be able to cope with the requirements of those that do still want to travel, and we're really getting in touch with them now to sort of get that ready in order to launch their travel program again once sort of the quarantine measures have come down. And there probably will be a few that are going to start traveling now after the 4th, with the hotels being able to reopen.
And what about in terms of client acquisition at the moment? Is that just gone totally quiet, Tom, or are there still conversations being had with new clients?
No, we've been very fortunate and successful. We've had I think 4 new customers sign, and we've had some of those customers that have started the sales process since COVID started. So they've started thinking about travel since COVID came in. And we've also been successful on a government framework as well. And we know that the government are going to be pushing in their travellers from, I think they said September, that they actually will be, you know, mandating them to get back out and lead the way in business travel. So leading by example. So we think it's a really hopeful sign.
That's really interesting. Yeah, great to hear you have some client wins.
Never bad.
Kieran, what's the feedback from your corporate TCs and what they're expecting from their clients in the next 3 months, 6 months?
So I would say in the SME sector, obviously there's a hesitant ebullience, I guess is probably the right way of describing it, about getting back out there. It's important to be face-to-face with customers, especially when you're running a small to medium enterprise business. So we've definitely heard that. In terms of new customer acquisition, we've seen, as Tom mentioned, quite a bit of activity in the last 4 to 6 weeks. And I think it's businesses that are now getting back to work, right? And they're also thinking about what do I need as a partner in the future. And actually quite a lot of them are placing more value on high touch, deeply personalized relationships, kind of trusted travel advisors, so to speak. So we're definitely seeing a shift, and that could be a result of poor service experiences, right? With regard to things like refunds, which is not anyone's fault, but it inevitably leaves a kind of bad taste in the mouth. Or it could just be a genuine shift towards that kind of offline, high-touch, personalized service, which is what we specialize in.
Yeah, that's the exciting silver lining in this whole mess, I guess, Clive, isn't it? That there are going to be corporates who start thinking about using a TMC for the very first time.
Yeah.
Absolutely, and I think that's again our job as the association is to shout about what these guys do and why they should be using them in the value proposition, and really focusing on what we believe is a professional services industry, and moving away from being travel providers. What these guys and our other members do is way beyond all of that, as helping businesses grow around the world. So it's never a better opportunity than to sell the wares of what the TMC industry provides, and see those that haven't used TMCs come in and use the services. So I totally agree.
Yeah, that's a very positive note for us to finish on. There was just one question which I'll throw out, just a quick one. Somebody's asked for your views on, should airlines be keeping the middle seat free? Will this really make a difference? Any thoughts on that one?
I would prefer they kept the middle seat free all the time, but I'm sure as the next airline guy, Clive's going to give me lots of economic reasons why that's a terrible idea.
It cannot be done.
Yeah.
Clive, do you think it would make a significant difference keeping the middle seat free in terms of safety?
I think we've lost him.
Clive's frozen. Okay, that's just as well that we're coming to an end, I think. Tom, have you got a thought on middle seats on airplanes?
I think it sounds like a good idea in the short term, but I think we all need to be trying to aim get back to some normality. And I think if that is the case, you can imagine prices are going to go up for a lot of different people, and that would probably have a negative impact on our industry as a whole. So although we want people to be safe, we probably want good prices on flights.
Yeah. Okay, we have run over very slightly, so I will draw it to a close there, but it's so interesting chatting to the three of you. Thanks very much for joining us on what's been a very busy day. Really hope those that tuned in have enjoyed it too. If you missed it live, the video will be available on ctgmedia.com later on today. Huge thanks, Clive, Kieran and Tom, for sharing what's going on in your organisations and giving us that update and that little bit of positivity as well, just a super solid positivity to keep us going. So thanks again, everybody, and join us next time. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.